Hi, thanks for joining us on the back porch with Feltalala today. I hope you can hear the birds singing. I can hear them. Today we're going to make an ornament with a floral design on it, a round ornament, so suitable for hanging anywhere. I also put mine on my Christmas tree, but particularly with the spring summer floral theme, they will go anywhere. So in your kit, will have received one pre-felted ball, 2 needles, one with no covering on it, which is a larger, firmer needle, and the other has a little painted edge, and that's a finer needle for finer work. And you will have received a number of wools. So there's going to be a green wool that's going to be the bottom of the ball, and then a sky blue that's going to be the top of the ball, and then a number of colors for the flowers, some greens and orange and yellow and pink and red, just a bunch of colors. And with this, like, you can go ahead and be creative. You don't have to do exactly what I do, but there are a few bits that it's a good idea to do. So I like to cover the ball first with green. That will be the bottom, so it's the grass, and then the sky blue at the top. And so you take the green and you want to apply small amounts at a time. So when you're felting, this is a good project for someone who's new to it. So I'm going to assume that you are. If you're not, then just skip over this part. So the idea is the needle itself has little barbs on the end of it, coming to about here, and the wool has barbs. So as you put the needle in to the wool, the barbs on this catch the barbs on that, and it tangles them up. And as they tangle up, you're able to create sculptures. It gives you structure. You can create any shape, really, that you want to create. So you want to, though, be going in and out in the same direction. You can do it vertically or horizontally or on a diagonal. But just always go out the same way you came in, because you don't want to break your needles. 2 things you don't want to do: break your needles, stab yourself. I did a lot of both at the beginning. So if you do happen to break your needles and stab yourself, don't let it stop you. Keep on going. So I find attaching the wool to this pre-felted ball works best if I come in a bit of a diagonal. Don't worry about being too quick with it. Don't try to push it. You just don't want to damage your needle. And felting is a slow craft, right? So the idea really is just to find some peace and joy in spending time tap, 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 tapping. Tap, 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 tapping. So I think I want to come up about a quarter of the way up the ball. And I want my ground to be, not necessarily a straight line, but I want it to be fairly even across. And you'll find that the wool has a few other colors in it. Like there's different levels of green. There's a little brown. Sometimes you come across some blue, which makes perfect sense, right? It's very nice for the ground to have. That gives you depth, right? That gives you immediate depth and some shading in your project. Okay, once you have your first level fairly attached, let's put on the next. You always want to be building up using small amounts at a time, not big chunks. I can kind of see through that, right? So you can see it's not a straight line, right? Which is nice, which is going to be nice. It's going to give some fluidity to the final work. I have a little bald spot there. So we talked about your needles as your tool, but the other tool that you have is your hands. So friction and the bit of moisture from your hands is really helpful for shaping, doing a little bit of pre-felting. And it helps to tangle up those fibers. Such a nice, I really like this mossy green. Okay. I think that's about right. I think that's about what I'm hoping for. Okay, so then the top is going to be a sky blue. And really just exactly the same method. Now this blue that I'm using is more of a roving. The fibers are lined up, honestly more than I want them to be. So I'm just going to crisscross them. So what do I mean by that? You can see in this, and it's interesting to me because different companies will call different things by different names. So I call this core wool or batting. The company that sold it to me actually called it roving, and they're a great company. They work with farmers across Canada, selling wonderful Canadian wool. Canadian wool industry is in trouble, so it's great to buy Canadian wool whenever you can. And the things, that Australian merino wool that took over the wool industry, that's a lovely wool for knitting and crocheting and weaving, spinning, and wet felters really like it. But for me, it's too fine. I prefer the Canadian wool. And I prefer it less processed. So this kind of roving type thing, you see this white I have is the same thing. And so the fibers haven't been all that much processed. So they're kind of tangled up to begin with, and they're short. You can pull off tiny little amounts. So that kind of core wool, is sometimes called bats, but then bats also means something else, is what I prefer. Then there's the roving. Roving is where you see the fibers I've pulled this already off of this piece of this blue, but see how these are very long fibers all going in the same direction. So they've taken the wool from this stage and then they've carded it and lined all those fibers up, which is great for lots of things that you would do with these fibers, but not my favorite. Except that there are some things that I really do want this for. Fur is one of them when I'm doing an animal portrait or on Peter Rabbit. In the case of the blue that I'm using for this, the blue that I send you is going to be more tangled, I believe. So you won't have to do this process. But if you do end up with these long fibers, that's the other thing. See how these pull really short? So you can get those tiny bits. You can get those tiny bits that we often want. More difficult to do with this because they're much longer. And when you're separating a longer from a longer one like this, you pull your hands farther apart and still just gently pull, and then you'll get that. So when you want your fibers more tangled, the thing to do is to take off small amounts and and crisscross them, right? And that will help. That will help with the tangling that you're looking for. So that's what I did here. And that pre-felted ball, there's little barb fibers in there too, right? So as we push this wool in, the barbs of the blue are attaching to the barbs of the white. And then on your edge, where you're putting blue into green, on the edge where the green meets the blue, just tap it kind of underneath the green a bit so that it's seamless. And you see down here, I've got, it's bunched up a bit. I don't really want that. I'd rather have layers of thin layers on top of each other. So you can see here, now that we have one layer of felt, or mostly one layer of felt, the crisscrossing isn't as important. You can put the long strands right on top because they've got the base underneath to attach to better. So just keep looking for bald spots. Where you see them, put another thin layer over top. So you end up with a nice, consistent sky. This blue is richer, really, than I thought it was. But the blue that I intend to send you is a little bit lighter. I think lighter is better. And you can keep going with this. You can keep perfecting it, smoothing it, evening it out, looking for and covering up any light patches. The more you work on it, the better it is going to be. But this is what our canvas looks like about now. We have our mossy green that the flowers are going to grow out of, going into a sky blue. So now is a good time for us to revisit some floral Easter eggs that we made around Easter. And those videos are up on our YouTube channel, so you can, or will be up shortly. So you can have a look at them and for inspiration as well. So what do we have here? This fellow, so on a white background, not a blue background, but you can see we went with some small purple flowers, different shades of green for the stems to give that some variety. So we have some little purples. I would say those are lupins, and then some nice pink flowers that are a little taller. You want variations in height with a golden center, and then these shorter yellow and blue, and then some poppies, and a buzzy bee. So that's an idea for a theme. I very much like playing with these little roundies. So you could put some little rosettes on. This one works really well with the blue, and it snakes around. So it starts here with that vine, and then branches coming off of the vine, and then these little orange flowers. So really simple, just the one, and it snaked around the egg. In the case of what we're doing here, right? We wouldn't go around. We would just go up with the vine. And here's one where we did use the green and the blue, and we have some poppies, and we have a little tree and some very tiny little flowers down there. And we put a cloud. It has a cloud. There we go. And here again is that orange vining motif on the blue. Works really well on the blue. In this one, we did a little 3D with the flower. We had the flower poof out, which is pretty simple to do and adds dimension. And we don't have a grassy bottom in this one. And we went with a really nice shape for that stem. So that's a simple one. It just has the one flower coming out at us. And here's one with a bunch of different flowers, all different heights, some leaning up around and over the others, some pinks, some yellows, some blues. These are some ideas for you. And then here we have the buzzy bee again, buzzy bee motif. And we brought these up and around. It's kind of surreal what we did there. And there's some blue and there's some purple. So I think, what we take from this is that it's good to have different heights of flowers, just like you were planting your own garden, right? You'd want there to be variety for the eye. You don't just want a bunch of flowers at the same height, unless you do. If you do, then that's what you should do with the colors that I've provided. And I'm just going to freestyle this. So the other thing that is important to notice with the colors that I've sent you, you are not restricted just to what I've sent, because what you can do in this, yours won't be exactly the same, but the theory is the same. So I was thinking a couple of different greens for stems, but what if I was to take the green that I already had for the bottom and blend it maybe with a yellow or orange. So color blending as you get into felting is super fun. So you can mix colors just by pulling. You can do this. Just do it long enough that you've created a new color. You don't have something that's bunchy like that. Or there's carding brushes that you can invest in. Or these, see, they say pet store on them. Pet store are just very inexpensive dog brushes. And for the amount of mixing that I do, they work just fine. So I just take the two colors and lay them out and then pull. Both ways, and pull it back. And now I have a different color, right? It's much lighter than this green, but much greener than this yellow. And then what if I looked at it and I said, yeah, it's still a little light, a little dark for me. Then what happens if I add a little white? Still a little bit of white to it. Or conversely, I could say, oh, you know what? I want this to be darker. So I can add a little brown to it or a little black to it and just create entirely new colors. And this is fun. If you're a beginner doing this project, maybe you're not going to want to start mixing colors. Or maybe you are. It's fun. It's fun. So that's kind of a fun stem color, I think. And the more you mix it, the smoother it's going to get. Okay, there you go. Small lesson in mixing colors. So, what shall we begin with? I can use my mixed color for a stem. And I know that I put green in this and I put the yellow in it. So I think this will be a nice combination. So I'm going to take a little bit of this yellow. Not much. Okay. First step, I'm going to make a stem. I'm going to twist this up a bit for this one. Ask myself, how tall do I want it to be? How thick do I want that stem to be? Is this going to be a tall, viney one? So I want this vine to be not really completely straight going up. I want there to be a little movement in it, I think. And you can look at the flowers in your garden and take inspiration from that. You can look online at different flowers. Okay, so that's kind of a thick stem. So it's going to need a large flower. And then when it's locked in, I can just snip it. And let's make a second one. I do find that the eye prefers things in odd numbers. So if I'm going to do 2, I am likely to want to do 3. And you want to have some symmetry. You want things to, I think this stem will echo that first stem a bit. But you don't also want too much symmetry. You want there to be some little different bits and pieces for the eye. I'm going to go with a similar height though. So then maybe our third stem could come up from here and come through, giving us some variety. I think that gives us more interest than just having three tall soldiers standing side by each. But then in other places that might make sense too. Okay, we said we wanted the yellow, and I want the flower to be fairly significant. You know what kind of flower does that, where it weaves, particularly as it starts to be in the later part of its life, is the tulip. I love tulips. And one of the things that I love about them is the way that they bend and weave. So maybe we'll go for a tulip shape for this guy. I think if I want to do that shape, I need to have a fairly short fiber and fold it. For a tulip kind of shape. The fold will be at the bottom where the flower meets the plant. And I'm going to make that kind of cup shape that you have. Okay, so I folded him back down. And there really is enough here for this to be a little bit 3D, which I like. If you have a few wisps that you're trying to get in, you can twirl around them, kind of pulls them in. That'll help you tidy things up a bit. I think I'm happy with that. Happy with that. So let's make another one. About here, and then this fellow here, I think might be a little bit behind our first tulip, right? Be back in behind there. I'm going to do that fold back again we did the first time. By using the needle for that fold, it helps me get a really nice line. So that second flower is just a little bit behind the first flower. And I'm going to ask him to come a little bit to the side. So we have our tulips. I'm happy with those.